Hello and welcome to Byju's IAS. Let's get started and look into the first article. The first article says converting waste to energy. We have the Karnataka Chief Minister who recently laid the foundation stone for 11.5 megawatt waste to energy plant near Biddi. So what is this waste to energy plant? This will basically convert the waste to generate energy in the form of electricity. When you look into the Bangalore city and its statistics with respect to the waste, it generates close to 5,000 tons of waste daily, of which 2,500 tons is organic waste. Then we have 1,000 tons which is invert material, that is the sweeping waste, and we have about 1,500 tons which happens to be the inorganic waste. What is this inorganic waste? Basically, this will include the plastic, the paper, cardboards and used clothes which will be taken up in this particular process and ultimately converted into the energy form of electricity. This plant, which is currently in Biddi, will be expected to process about 600 tons per day of inorganic waste, where it will also make sure that there is segregation of the organic and the inorganic waste as well. So the organic waste will be converted into the compost and the inorganic waste will be converted into energy in the form of electricity. Now the question is, why did the Karnataka government come up with such an initiative? Or we can take other state governments as well, or we can look at Delhi in specific as well, where state governments have taken similar steps to make sure that there is waste to energy conversion plants. What is the importance or what is the need of coming up with such plants? When you look into all these major cities, let's take for example Delhi or in Bengaluru, what we actually witness is huge amount of trash that which is collected every single day. So what does the BBMP or for example in Delhi the municipal corporation do? They collect all this waste trash and put it outside the city limits. So this trash or the waste that is collected is usually piling up in a particular place or in a landfill. Such dispensation happens and all the waste is built up as much as to the height of the Burj Khalifa when it comes to the waste that which is segregated in a specific city. So what happens? This waste that is segregated in a specific city, in an outside premises, in a landfill will usually catch up fire as well. Why? Because all these wastes are not segregated, they are not disposed in a proper way, and as a result all the chemicals that are persisting within these wastes can cause fire accidents in this particular area. So why are these plants important? In order to make sure that fire accidents does not happen and segregation happens and waste to energy conversion happens on a proper basis. This is a key requirement. Also remember, when it comes to the waste management, as we just discussed, they are usually dumped in the landfill outside the city premises. But what is the major issue right now? When there is rain that occurs in this particular region, the rainwater also takes with it all the waste and the chemicals into the groundwater. So when it is into the groundwater, the quality of the groundwater gets deteriorated due to the improper management. Poorly managed waste also means that it is acting as a disease vector, and ultimately this will also contribute to the climate change issues, which will generate methane in this particular region and ultimately become a major problem to the urban crisis as well. And Bengaluru, when it comes to the management of this waste, also incurs a high cost. Because of all these issues, the government had to come up with such an initiative of where they came up with the waste to energy plant. It is similar issues that which is persisting in other states as well as major cities as well. This can be taken with respect to Delhi. It can be an example with respect to Mumbai as well, where all these major cities also suffer a similar issue of why waste to energy plant becomes very important. Now when we look into the significant aspect, all these waste to energy plants are assumed to be environmentally safe, a sustainable solution. Why? In order to reduce the burden of the landfill and also the land requirement to dump all these waste that are segregated from the city limits. The plant in Biddi will also be able to generate the power as well. This will be the byproduct of the plant, which will also be operating as part of the state grid. This will also reduce the city's dependency on the unscientific landfills and also reduce the fire accidents, which we discussed as the first major point of concern. And it also provides a permanent solution to recover the value from the inorganic waste. This will also result in huge savings for the BBMP in the state of Karnataka, and as a result, this can become a model to many other cities in India as well. So the Bruhat Bengaluru Mahanagara Palike usually spends huge amount of money for the transport and the management of the garbage. So all the money will now be said is some of the significant aspects of this waste to energy issue. Apart from these significant aspects, there are various challenges when it comes to its execution. What are the various challenges? Let's say, for example, for over the last 1 decade or so, there have been multiple cities in India which have been trying to enforce this waste to energy plant. But are there any successful model? As of now, we do not have any good demonstrative models, or we do not have an examples such that we can say that this has improvised the waste to energy bracket in that particular city. So what we have to wait and watch is whether this particular model which is sanctioned in the city of Bengaluru, will it be a successful one or not? When we look into the technology suppliers, most of these companies which are operating the waste to energy are the international organizations. These international organizations struggle to find the change in the quality. What do we mean by it? Let's say, for example, if we are considering waste to energy plants in Germany, or let's say, for example, in some other country like Sweden, they receive largely segregated ones. So what are the segregated ones? We have the organic and we also have the inorganic. These are completely segregated at the source itself, and when they are obviously segregated, we have the high calorific value source which can be put up and converted into energy. But what happens in India and what happens in the city of Bengaluru? This source segregation does not happen, and as a result, the inorganic waste has very low calorific value. So what should the plants do? The plants usually require fine inorganic material with less than 5% moisture and less than 5% silt and soil contents. But when we look at Bengaluru or most of the cities in India, the moisture and the inert content in the mixed waste generated in the city is more than 15 to 20%. So obviously means when there is no source segregation that happens, it will be a problem for generation of the energy. The bigger other challenge is with respect to the power tariff. Let's say, for example, there is a distribution company. So this distribution company usually procures power or purchases power from one of the power plant. Let's say this power plant is based out of coal. So the power that is produced is from coal. If there is procurement of this particular power from the coal power plant, it is usually purchased at the rate, let's say, about 3 to 4 kilowatt hour. But if it is procured or purchased from this waste to energy plant, it will be about 7 to 8 rupees per kilowatt. So usually, who will the distribution companies prefer? They will obviously prefer someone who is producing from coal and not from the waste to energy conversion plant. And as a result, the major challenge would also be for the distribution companies. Why? Because they would not be able to transfer the same on to the people, and as a result, the distribution companies might also be bound to suffer because of the waste to energy plant. Going forward, if this model becomes a successful one, we might require 3 to 4 waste to energy plants for the city of Bengaluru, and if it is becoming successful over a period of time, this can also be replicated and enforced in other major cities of India, is what we have to understand with reference to this article. Now let's look into the next article. This article here is speaking about India's relationship with United Kingdom. We have the British Prime Minister Boris Johnson, who is set to make his visit to India as the chief guest of the Republic Day celebrations. Mr. Johnson will be the first head of the government who will be visiting India after the mighty COVID-19 hit the major countries of the world. So he would be making the visit to India as part of the Republic Day celebrations, and this will also be one of the first visits after the Brexit program has been initiated, signaling the importance of India's relationship to the Britain. In this particular backdrop, we have to understand the major concerns between India and Britain. When it comes to India's partnership, let's say, for example, with respect to United States of America or with respect to France, we have a beautiful relationship politically and also on the diaspora level as well. But when it comes to India as well as United Kingdom, the people to people contacts have increased, the diaspora relationship have also increased, we also have the commercial relationship as well. But when it comes to the political aspects, the convergent points between the political aspirations is comparatively less. Why is that? There is political problems between India and Britain. That is what we have to look at. The major point of issue is with respect to the Kashmir factor in the UK-India relationship. The Kashmir question is a legacy of British imperialism. Sections of the British establishment still feel that they have certain rights when it comes to Kashmir issue, but they have forgotten that India is a sovereign country. It is no more under the fold of the British Empire. In fact, India has always said when it comes to the Kashmir issue, it is a bilateral issue between India and Pakistan, and it does not entertain third party interfering with respect to Kashmir. But periodically, because of the British imperialistic policies and because of the past, there have been few members of the parliamentarians who voiced concern about the internal factor of India, and that happens to be about Kashmir. The another important problem is with respect to Article 370. Article 370 was diluted. That was entirely the internal issue of India. But what exactly happens? Because of the Pakistani origin community's role and influence in British electoral politics, there were few parliamentarians from the Labour Party who voiced concern about Article 370. In fact, they went ahead and asked India to implement the United Nations resolution, and such was an attempt made by the Labour Party parliamentarians. Why did they do that? That is because when you look at the statistics, British is home to about 1.5 million Indian origin people, and at the same time there are about 1.1 million people of Pakistani origin as well. Most of these people who are from Pakistan are from the region of Pakistan controlled Kashmir. Because they have to gain political mileage in United Kingdom, there are certain parliamentarians from the Labour Party who support the cause of Pakistan when it comes to Kashmir. India has always said that when it comes to Kashmir, no country will interfere, and that is why this has become a major problem, and that happens to be the Kashmir factor as a major impediment between India as well as United Kingdom. India has also felt that Britain's role in Afghanistan was more facilitating the idea of Pakistan rather than establishing peace in this particular sector. So whatever Pakistan has been counting on, whatever Pakistan's views have been, it has been supported by the United Kingdom and the Britain previously, but this is again haunting the Indian political sector. Finally, there is also a growing perception in Indian circles that British is not doing enough when it comes to extraditing the high net worth individuals, and one such example is Vijay Mallya. So the process that was supposed to be initiated, expedited, so that Vijay Mallya, who happens to be an economic offender, comes back, is not taken up seriously by the United Kingdom government. As a result, there is political crisis that which is unfolding, which has unfolded when it comes to India and United Kingdom. So what is the consequences right now? What we actually witness is that British is going through a process of Brexit, which means they might not have good relationship with number of countries in the European Union. As a result, they have to find new relationship, and one such country that they have to be really good is with respect to India. So Britain is getting prepared to disconnect with the European Union. So what it requires is change in policies when it comes to the foreign as well as economic policies. Since it is going through a process of Brexit, it requires new partners for economic upgradation. So Britain of late is getting closer to India when it comes to the economic policies. And at the same time, as we have discussed, India has its own type of sensitivities. So going forward, Britain will have to be sensitive about India's security concern, will have to make sure that India's enhanced power and influence is respected, and it should also respond to India's priority and communicate the objectives more easily as well. So these are the major issues, and they going forward will have to be sorted out as well. So in this particular backdrop, India and Britain can take up number of other aspects. What are these aspects? It includes trade and prosperity, defense and security, climate change and health going forward. We will take up this article once again when Mr. Boris Johnson comes to India, and we will also have an elaborate discussion once again when they enter into some terms and conditions and agreements between both the countries. Now let's look into the next article. This article says sanctions overreach. This article here is speaking about the sanctions imposed by the United States of America on Turkey. Why? Because Turkey happened to buy the missile defense system from Russia, and as a result there is a relationship gap between United States of America and Turkey in the present scenario. Before we understand what this article and sanctions are all about, we have to understand one of the missile defense system, that is S-400, that which has been procured by Turkey from Russia. What is this S-400? Basically, this is a mobile surface to air missile system which is designed by Russia. It is considered one of the best surface to air missile, even better than the terminal high altitude air defense system of the United States of America. So kindly remember, most of the countries like Turkey, China and in fact India buy the Russian one. That is because it is much better than the United States of America. The system currently has an integration of the radar, the command vehicle, the engagement radar and the launch vehicle as well. So whenever there is a particular target, it can be an aircraft or it can be an unmanned air vehicle or it can be a ballistic or a cruise missile within a range of 400 kilometer, then this particular surface to air missile would be able to engage that particular aircraft or a cruise or a ballistic missile. So kindly remember, that is why it is called as S-400. S-400 is basically the range within which this particular surface to air missile would be able to operate, and as a result we have countries like Turkey, China and India who have procured S-400 system from Russia. This has raised issues between United States of America as well as Turkey. What is the major cause of concern? Let's say for example we are a sovereign country. As we are a sovereign country, any country for that matter should have to be able to take up decisions on an independent basis. In order to make sure that countries do not actually disturb us, what we also have to require is defense equipments as well. One such defense equipment is the S-400. So Turkey in the present scenario as a sovereign country would be able to procure any type of military equipment from any country whose United States of America to impose sanctions, as this indirectly means it is meddling with the sovereignty of Turkey, and each country takes decisions on its own defense based on the requirements and the security challenges. But why is United States of America imposing sanctions on Turkey? This ultimately means that Turkey will go away from United States of America and fall into the hands of Russia as well. So President Recep Tayyip Erdogan has also called that this is an attack on Turkey's sovereignty as well. This will also have global ramifications. What are these global ramifications? Turkey is one of the member of the NATO alliances, and Turkey happens to be the largest contributor of the military personnel after the United States of America. If United States of America is imposing sanctions on Turkey, then Turkey can also withdraw from NATO as well. Cooperation between United States of America and Turkey and defense companies between both these countries can also be on hold, and defense companies in United States of America will also suffer greatly is one of the global ramifications. We also have the United States of America Turkey tensions, which can also exacerbate other issues as well. What are those? Currently we have issues between Greece as well as Turkey. France is also supporting Greece indirectly as well. It is also provided Rafale fighter jets, armed Greece with the highly capable Meteor missiles as well. In this particular spat, if France is supporting Greece, there could be a provision where Russia starts supporting Turkey, and this can be a major unstable factor when it comes to the European circles. The United States of America right now has to make sure that this European issue does not exasperate, and as a result, it has to take a deeper look into this particular sanction in order to weigh the advantages and the disadvantages when it comes to the global stability. And when it comes to India, as of now, we do not have any type of sanctions from the United States of America, since India is also planning to procure these S-400s from Russia. Is there a possibility that United States of America can impose sanctions on India? In the past, United States of America has clarified that since India is part of the United States of America's led Indo-Pacific policy, India has every right to safeguard itself because it has enemies on the western as well as eastern frontier. So United States of America had given a waiver in the past, but now after the Turkey incident, will it also be applied on India is what needs to be waited and watched as well. Another important angle is mutual animosity both for United States of America as well as Turkey. Since sanctions are imposed by United States of America, it has also meant that Turkey will be suspended from the joint F-35 program of the United States of America. And at the same time, we also have to understand that Turkish President Recep has also said that Turkey may close down its Incirlik Air Base and the Kurucik radar station, which United States of America has access to. When you look into this particular airbase, it is one of the important and crucial air bases for the United States of America. Why? Because most of its missions when it comes to the Middle East and Central Asia takes place from this Incirlik airbase, and as a result, if United States of America is imposing sanctions removing Turkey from F-35 program, reciprocity in the form of negative impact can also come from Turkey, where sanctions can also be imposed by Turkey in terms of stripping away United States of America from operating in its Incirlik airbase. And also remember, the major problem for the United States of America is also the defense cost as well. When it comes to sanctions, if it is imposed by United States of America, there could be a provision that Turkey may start going close to Russia as well. It might also start taking high defense contracts as well. So who will be the major sufferers? Companies which have now been exporting all these important defense equipments to Turkey. Such companies in United States of America will be the major sufferer. So diversifying its sources, what Turkey can do, it can look at Russia, it can look at China, but this is where there will be a major conflict between United States of America and Turkey in this particular case. And at the same time, we also have to look at the Russian factor when it comes to Turkey and Russian relationship. When it comes to Russia and Turkey, they also have conflicting viewpoints as well. Let's take for example Syria, or with respect to Azerbaijan, both these countries had conflicting viewpoints. So saying that Russia will have a complete control over Turkey or Turkey will be under the lap of Russia is again not right, says this article. So going forward, if United States of America is imposing sanctions, it has to weigh the confrontation between United States of America and Turkey on one side and the global ramifications that can be an outcome of this particular sanction. Now let's look into some of the preliminary practice questions. Consider the following statements about Abdur Rahim Khan. He was a poet who lived in India during the rule of Mughal Emperor Akbar. He was one of the 9 important ministers in his court, also known as Navaratnas. Which of the above statements is or correct? The answer to this is both. Why have we taken this practice question? Because of the reference given under this article. So kindly remember, when it comes to Abdur Rahim Khan, he was a poet who lived in India during the reign of Mughal Emperor Akbar. Now let's look into the next practice question. With reference to Abdul Ghaffar Khan, which of the following statements is or correct? He founded Kundai Kirtmaka movement in 1929. Khan strongly opposed the partition of India. Which of the statements are correct? Both the statements given here are correct. Why have we taken this practice question? because of the reference given under this article. Now let's look into the next practice question. Which of the following statements about Human Freedom Index is or correct? It is an annual guide published by the Heritage Foundation, a Washington-based think tank. On a scale of 0 to 10, 10 represents more freedom in the index. Which of the statements are correct? The answer to this is 2 only. Why have we taken this practice question? Because of the reference given under this article. So kindly remember, the report is published by Cato Institute as well as the Fraser Institute. And when it comes to the global ranking, we have New Zealand, which is ranked first, followed by Switzerland and Hong Kong. When it comes to India, it is ranked 110 in terms of the personal index, 105 on the economic freedom, with an overall score of 6.53 out of 10 as well. Now let's look into the next practice question. With reference to India's Desert National Park, which of the following statements are correct? It is spread over 2 districts. It is no human habitation inside the park. It is one of the natural habitats of Great Indian Bustard. Select the correct answer using the code given below. The answer to this is 1 and 3. Kindly remember, when it comes to Desert National Park, it is spread in the state of Rajasthan in the districts of Jaisalmer as well as Barmar. An endangered Great Indian Bustard is also present in fair numbers when it comes to this national park, and there is human habitation inside this park as well. Now let's look into the mains practice question. Discuss the obstacles which has prevented the growth of India-Britain political relations. How can Britain forge a closer relationship with India in the wake of Brexit? Next question. What is CATSA? How does its imposition on Turkey impact Turkey-USA relations? Will it be a cause of worry for India? Examine. So please write all your answers on the comment section, peer review, and also come up with constructive criticism. So this is it for today. Thank you for watching. All the best.